I bought this Netgear GS305 network switch that's a 5-port. It's supposed to be gigabit speeds, but when I plug it in, it starts out at gigabit speeds. It stays there as long as you don't use the gigabit speeds, as long as you're just tapping it real lightly. But after about 5 minutes of constantly slamming it at gigabit speeds, like with the Mac Mini, transferring video files, getting video files off of SD cards or CF Express cards and putting them onto the server at gigabit speeds, it negotiates down to 100 megabits per second. And all the ports go to 100 megabits per second. It stays there, which is really annoying because I bought the Netgear, the trusted brand Netgear GS305 because it was gigabit speeds. I spent an extra $10 to have gigabit speeds, and it's not able to sustain those for more than about 5 or 10 minutes if I'm constantly hitting it, or like if I'm transferring my 8K time-lapse files from my SD card off of my camera onto the server. So this is definitely not made for transferring video files. So this is not something that's just gonna go in my desk underneath my workstation to connect back to my server. I've made some improvements there. I'll make a video about that. So I put it in my media cabinet, right? With the Mac Mini, with the Nintendo Switch, with the smart TV, right? So 5 ports is plenty of ports for that, right? The Nintendo Switch could actually benefit from downloading games at gigabit speed. Some of the larger games, some of the more popular games that Nintendo is probably caching on their SSD servers are downloading at gigabit speeds, or at least 500 megabit speeds. The Nintendo Switch is downloading a large game like Fortnite, let's say. After about 5 minutes, it'll negotiate down to 100 megabits per second. The Mac Mini is doing its thing, right? It's transferring video files, it's doing that, and then this negotiates down to 100 megabits per second. That's really frustrating. It will stay at 100 megabits per second until you unplug it and plug it back in. Okay. The Mac Mini is honestly slowed down by gigabit speeds. I could really benefit from 10 gigabit speeds on the Mac Mini, the M1 Mac Mini. This Switch can't even handle gigabit speed. If you're trying to watch a 4K movie at HDR, this might actually conk out and negotiate down to 100 megabits per second. It's limiting my ability to justify using this because I do so many large file transfers. So it wasn't the cheapest gigabit switch on Amazon, but it was Netgear, so I knew that I could trust that Netgear had a solid switch, and that's not the case. So I think my next purchase for my media cabinet is going to be either the Hasvo. Hasvo's not really available in the US unless you buy from AliExpress. The MokerLink, which is the same thing as the Hasvo, but it's the US brand. The MokerLink that has the 6 ports, one of them is an SFP plus 10 gigabit port, and then the next port is a 10 gigabit 10 base T RJ45 port, which is going to be super useful for the Mac Mini. And then the other 4 ports are 2.5 gigabit ports, which will just be useful either for the Mac Mini or for anything else. Unfortunately, the dock on the Nintendo Switch is not compatible with any sort of USB to 2.5 gigabit RJ45 adapters. It only is compatible with 1 gigabit adapters. So Nintendo Switch is limited to 1 gigabit, which is fine. My internet's not that fast anyway. That's fine. TV is limited to 100 megabits. 2.5 gigabit ports aren't going to help there. But in the future, if I'm getting some sort of Android TV box, maybe those 2.5 gigabits would help. And they would definitely help in the case of the Mac Mini being in that media cabinet. So, yeah, really disappointed with the Netgear GS305. Don't buy this.